What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick,
And my name is Dave.
and this is the first time we've been together in like
A month.
a month.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
It is good to see you
We
too.
were just like ships passing in the night.
Yeah, that's right. But we're,
I came back, you left,
yeah.
but I'm ready to get into this podcast. What are we talking about today?
Emotions.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Based on the sermon yesterday.
Yeah.
Back into our normal rhythm. I like it.
Yep. Let's do it.
Let's get into it. Well, Dave, we have a pretty long-term time that we haven't talked in a bit, but
And
a
there's
lot of
so much we could
sports has
talk about.
happened.
So much is talked about.
I know. We've
Yeah.
changed seasons. Hurricanes have happened. Sports have happened all since
Yeah.
we really kind of hung out and chatted. But you ready for the Braves playoffs run?
I am. I'm ready for the Braves playoffs.
Okay.
Starting tomorrow.
The
Yeah,
Phillies. I feel okay against the Phillies. They're probably the one team I would have wanted to face out of the four that are left in the National League.
More than Padres?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Just because of the familiarity.
Yeah.
You know, the Padres, they're probably going to get beat by the Dodgers pretty good because the Dodgers destroyed them.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, we got to get through the Dodgers.
Yeah.
At any rate.
Always going to have to, and that whole, if we get to the NLCS, I'm not writing anything off, but if we get to the NLCS and we have to face Freddie, isn't that something that's like written in stories?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's going to be hard.
Well, and that brings up a pretty good segue as we talk about emotions.
Yeah.
Because I think there's one thing, at least for you and me, but I think a lot of people, we get real emotional about sports, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm not like one of the extremists where like it'll ruin my day, but I'm definitely like, I feel the nerves, I get the butterflies, all that good stuff.
I don't think it ruins your day, but you need a little self-awareness.
Yes.
You're definitely winning or losing is
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about it.
yeah.
But,
But it is, a range of emotions, particularly I think one of the first illustrations I talked about Atlanta sports.
yeah.
I remember when we were doing the Hot Wings Challenge, you asked me about those real disappointing times that we've had in Atlanta sports, whether it was UGA, blowing the game against Alabama, the Falcons, the Braves had gotten beat that year after, being up 3. So we definitely get those swings.
Oh, yeah.
But we are, we're talking about emotions, started a new sermon series this week. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be kind of delving into them a little bit.
Okay.
And because we all got emotions, right?
Yeah. And I thought you said it well yesterday in terms of kind of your I guess lead up to the actual sermon part of telling the story of like just the emotions we all go through. But I did have a conversation yesterday with a few ladies, and they said, you know what he needs to do next week?
Yeah.
Is talk about a Bachelorette episode where we go up and down, because I don't relate to the sports at all is what they were telling me. But
Okay. Yeah, I have to watch that. Sometimes I can use too many sports illustrations. But yeah, I've never watched one episode of The Bachelorette. So
I haven't either.
yeah,
So
I can't do that. But we'll come up with something.
maybe that should be our next video. Is
Yeah.
we'll watch The Bachelorette together and make comments on it.
That's right. But anyway, so we're talking about emotions, because we've all got them.
Yeah.
Okay. We explain, we experience a whole range of them. And so where do emotions come from? Of course, you could look at it from the science point of the, physiological or the hormonal parts of us. But ultimately, I think we as believers would say, they're God-given. God created emotions, gave us emotions. And Jesus had emotions. Jesus, of course, very famous, shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. But Jesus also famously got angry. Jesus got very frustrated with the Pharisees. Jesus showed extreme love. Jesus had a range of emotions, even when he was going to the cross and he is praying in the garden. That says he wept drops of blood, which is like extreme emotional kind of anxiety thing, stuff to do that. So he had the range of emotions, yet he had a way of processing the emotions as such that he could say, God, if there's any way that I can get out of this, please don't let this happen, but your will be done.
Yeah.
And so he processed those emotions beautifully, and that's who we we look to him and other scriptures as a way of, I think of his example that God created our emotions, but we need to have control of our emotions, particularly the ones that can get out of control and sort of swing us one way or the other in an unhealthy manner. Right?
Yeah. I think, especially when you talk about Jesus, it's so comforting to me to kind of see a lot of those emotions because it really brings the humanity side to Jesus, and understand that even though he expressed so many emotions, because there'd be some people be like, well, is getting angry a sin because it shouldn't be all about love? It's like, well, no, but it's about kind of like, what are you getting angry about, and
Right.
what's that leading you to think or to do or to whatever. Jesus used it as like a teaching moment of like, this isn't how we treat a sacred space. This isn't what we do. We don't sell stuff in our temple courts and stuff like that.
And I'm going to go so far to say that like anger can be a good thing. Controlled anger. I would say that if there is a line out there where it turns into like rage or something like that.
Yeah.
That's not good. That probably is sin.
Yeah.
But like controlled anger can be a very positive force in us. If
Absolutely.
we're angry about the right things, we should be angry about the right things.
And a lot of things like that people have done for good have been driven out of place of they're angry about something happening, whether it's a foster care system like we talked to Sarah about last week, or people being sold into sex trafficking and stuff like that.
Right.
It
We
takes
should be
that
angry
anger
about-
of people wanting to go do something about it.
And so that's really the point of this series is that like how do we control and harness those good emotions that God has created? Because there are some emotions that have taken to an extreme, and if they're not processed in a healthy way, it can end up leading to anxiety and depression and all sorts of bad stuff, division in relationships and all sorts of bad stuff. And so that's what we were looking at. God's given us these emotions, but how do we process them? How do we allow God to help us process them in a way that's healthy and leads us to the abundant life that God wants us to have?
Yeah, and I love I love how, and I think we've talked about this a few times, even though you're talking about this like all or nothing thinking or this like totally black and white thinking, and we've spoken that like we like to have conversations kind of in the gray and be able to be like kind of meet people and not condone or condemn or whatever, but to have a good conversation about whatever the topic
Right.
is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we have talked at it because I do think, and actually using the word epidemic almost sounds like all or nothing thinking. But I really do think there is sort of an epidemic of this sort of black and white, all or nothing thinking that's going on, that we're looking at things in the extreme where it's all good, it's all great, it's all fantastic, or it's all terrible. Usually it's all terrible.
Yeah.
And so we see that in how we talk about different people, but also I think how people will internalize it in themselves. Oh, I'm all bad.
Yeah.
And generally I think that's what can lead people down the path of going into extreme anxiety or depression. But the whole thinking in the extremes, everything is bad. It was the worst day ever. Nothing is going right. And so, but we've kind of been set up a little bit, I think, culturally right now because of that. So people that think in that way, any kind of critique is looked at as an attack.
Yeah.
And, if it's not perfect, it also leads to sort of these perfectionism where people can get really debilitated in that and having to think everything has to be perfect because nothing's perfect. There's no perfect person, no perfect church, no perfect marriage.
Yeah, I thought when you said that yesterday, like when I guess you listed off about 4 or 5 things, and that was kind of a hard hitting like, oh, we about to really talk. You know what I mean? Because I think we generally have that perception of maybe even especially younger families who haven't had as much working life or whatever, that we got to find the perfect job that, everybody says like, well, if you work at something you love, it won't feel like work. And it's like, yeah, there's part of that, but also not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows either. Like I like to think that I have a job that I love, and it doesn't feel necessarily like going to work as much as it does working on a calling, or working with a calling, but it's every day perfect. I wouldn't say that,
Right. For sure. because that it's life, and
Yeah.
life's not perfect, and life has ups and downs. Life is beautiful, but yet within that, there's a lot of complexity and that sort of thing. I'll give you an example of this. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit. And I shared on Sunday that I just got back from vacation, and part of that vacation was a cruise.
Yeah.
And on a cruise, if you're on a cruise,
I've actually never been on a cruise.
you need to do it. But you go to dinner at night, and lots of times you're seated with different people, and so the same people every night.
Yep.
So there were two other couples that were there with us, and we got real close with them. And you have the same waiter every night, so we got very close with him. And so it's coming down, at the end, and they're wanting to do their survey, to give feedback for them. And so we're talking around the table, and a couple of the people in our group had gone and done the ship tour, and they had learned that those waiters, they're absolutely what they get in these surveys. It really determines their pay and that sort of stuff. And so, want to be good and be fair, right?
Yeah.
And so they were saying, we need to give all 10s. Well, first of all, it was his first week as a waiter on the ship, and he wasn't a 10. He was a great person. I love the guy.
Yeah.
But, he wasn't a 10.
Okay.
And so if you don't ever give that sort of subtle feedback to somebody, how do they ever grow and stuff? And so I kind of challenged her on that. I said, well, this and that. And she says, she worked for customer service, and I'll go ahead and tell the company for Lowe's.
Okay.
And she said they throw out anything except 1s and 10s. That's all they look at. And
Did she tell you why?
that's just what they've learned to do. I don't know that every company does that,
Okay.
but they only get 1s and 10s. And I was going, whoa. That is, because I'm getting ready to preach this. This
Yeah.
is like on Friday.
Yeah.
like
Oh, thanks for the illustration.
that is, I didn't use it yesterday, but that is all or nothing thinking, such that if he doesn't get a 10, then everything else is terrible.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a 1, but he wasn't a 10 either. And you and I, we do staff evaluations, and
Yeah.
I don't know that we give 10s
Not really.
because everybody, I shouldn't get a 10. No, everybody's got, room to
I was gonna
improve.
say, I'm pretty sure we tell people kind of up front is like,
Yeah.
you do not expect the highest, whatever the score. I think we
Right.
did 5s, but like,
Yeah.
don't expect the highest score because none of us are perfect, you know, like.
So anyway, I would just using that as an example though, because then you see how people have got this anxiety. It's, I didn't get a 10,
Yeah.
or I got a 1, and I guess they consider it like a 1 if they got it, but this is totally binary. Why only have 2? Only have 2, 1 or 2,
Yeah.
instead of having 10. So I thought that was very interesting, but I think culturally that's a lot of what's going on, and you see people and reacting to that. So anyway, I guess to the point as we get into this is what do we do about that? All or nothing thinking is pretty easy to identify because it's out there.
Yeah.
So what are strategies that we can use to be better about that? Not that we're all going to be perfect or 10s.
Yeah.
How can we get better with doing that? So I used a text from Philippians 4 and went back to that to give 3 points. And I'll just read the first one. We'll talk about that a little bit. But first one, looking at the text where in Philippians it says to take our problems and our worries to God, and the peace of God which surpasses all understanding will guard your minds in Christ Jesus. So when we're having these anxious, worrisome, black or white or all or nothing thinking things, to take those to God and allow Him to do the work. And I think part of that just leads to some sort of self-awareness of like, okay, it seemed like the worst day ever. Was it really the worst day ever? Was there something good about that? What am I really feeling? I may be feeling anger here, but anger is kind of a secondary emotion. What is it? Do I have hurt feelings? What is it that's really going on here? I think that can help us in our emotional maturity.
Yeah, I agree. I think having some sort of end of day kind of breakdown session with yourself, whether that's like you put the kids to bed or you just have some quiet time after dinner or whatever to go sit outside. Like right now, it's beautiful outside. I'd recommend everybody go sit outside for 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
But just to kind of think through your day and recognize like, okay, I'm feeling stressed, anxious. What are the main causes of that? Because ultimately, I think it's not healthy if you let every little bad thing dictate every part of your day, because I think we have a tendency sometimes to just like self-loathe almost like, oh, woe is me. We want to kind of feel that, and we feel like other people's, oh, it's okay, you'll have a better day tomorrow or what, like, but ultimately it doesn't always accomplish that, and sometimes people don't say the right things or whatever, and it just leads to more hurt feelings. But I would take that time each day to like set aside and just think through the things that happened in your day. What happened that was good? What happened that was bad? Maybe where could I improve, but also where did I succeed?
Yeah.
And just kind of mentally ask yourself some of those questions. And I know some people. I'm not a journaler, but I know some people like to journal those types of things. I think that's a great strategy. Some people
it
like
is.
to kind of go zone out for 20 or 30 minutes, like playing a video game or doing a puzzle or doing something on your phone or whatever, and then come back to it. I think all those things are good. Is like find the way that you could separate yourself for a little bit from everything else going on and go, okay, what did this day hold?
Yeah. And I'm gonna go back to the journaling thing because I'm not much of a journaler either. I have done it like on trips and stuff, keeping
Yeah.
a diary. But I was working with a counselor one time when I was going through some therapy, and he, part of my homework was I had to keep a mood journal where I did just that. And it actually helped me develop that skill. And that's what we're having. I don't know that I need to do it. It probably would do me some good to do it from time to time now.
Yeah.
But there was really something about sitting down and writing out exactly what I was feeling and why I was feeling at the time. And you begin to see the more of, we'll talk about this in point 3, more of the nuance of life.
Yeah.
That it's not all one way or the other way. That it's really a combination of two things, and you can begin to see the good. It's like if we have this all or nothing thinking, someone pulls out in traffic, and we just go off, we get lit, and because we're thinking they're intentionally being rude, could be they just didn't see us,
Right.
And so I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does.
really taking these checks to help us have a more moderate reaction to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to say, just because I don't see it necessarily on our list of what we were going to talk about, I think one of the most important things you said yesterday was validating the need for counseling and therapy and stuff like that,
Right.
and saying that it's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that there's still people who kind of give that type of concept of a scarlet letter, and I want to denounce that.
Yeah.
Because it's not. Like, this is a great resource and a great tool people who have been well trained to help you through things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to have a third party to kind of run through things by. There are people who aren't involved in whatever you have going on. But sometimes it's like, if you need medication to get you through a certain time of life, get the medication. Like, it's not.
Depression is a real thing.
Yes.
I've suffered from it before, and had many, many, many people I know who have. And you cannot just pull yourselves up by the bootstraps.
Yeah.
And getting some help to get healthy and get clear is the way to go. And you got to ask for help. And there is no shame. And I don't know why. We'll take our car. Our car's making a bad noise, and so we take it into the shop and don't think a thing of it. But something happens in our emotional life, and we just have the stigma. Or even like you fall down and need to have stitches, and you don't worry about going to the doctor for that. But yet, if it's for our emotional health, oftentimes there's just this stigma that's there that shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I just wanted to reiterate that because I thought that was so important for people to hear and listen to, because and I know as a pastor, I'm sure you've been in a lot of sessions of like counseling nature type things, and I have too, being in youth ministry so long. But there's always a certain point where it's like, I'm no longer qualified to help,
right?
And I want you to get the right help. You know what I mean? Which is always hard to say to people, but it's also like, I promise you, this will be much more helpful than I could ever be at this point. I'm not trying to pawn you off somebody else. Like, there's a certain time.
You need at some point in your life to have somebody who's objective.
Yeah.
And lots of times as pastors, we have trouble being objective, and we can be with someone pastorally, but they need to get some more professional help from somebody that's has training way beyond my
Absolutely.
pay grade.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that back up. A couple of other points that I made yesterday coming out of this challenging are trying to deal with all or nothing thinking. One is to learn to challenge your feelings. And that's hard to do because, you know, sometimes my feelings are right, but oftentimes my feelings are wrong. But just because we feel some way, and just because we feel that way, maybe very passionately, doesn't necessarily mean that that's true.
Yeah.
And so to give ourselves permissions to sit back and not to be second guessing yourself all the time, but to challenge, why am I feeling this way?
Yes.
And like I've done that, and it's been very helpful for me since kind of learning some of these things about cognitive behavior therapy, is that like, okay, I'm feeling very sad today.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling sad? Is there a real reason? Is it something chemically that's going on? Or is there a real reason for why I'm feeling sad? Or is it something else? You know, did I get my feelings hurt, or am I tired? What is it that's making me feel sad? But to challenge those kind of emotions that we have, I think is, you know, very helpful.
That's
Yeah.
something that I really admire about my wife.
Yeah.
She's really good. Sometimes she will sit in an emotion for a while,
Yeah.
but when she feels like because sometimes emotions will ride with you for a while. You might feel sad for a while, or you might feel angry for a while. Like it's not just a one day and done thing for some emotions. And sometimes you don't even really know why. Like there might just be certain times or certain seasons where it's just like, I just feel sad. And maybe it's the anniversary of something, or maybe
Right.
it's just a lot of hard things are happening around and you,
Changing the atmospheric pressure.
yeah,
I mean, it can be a lot of things.
right.
You have to take
But
that.
when she senses that she's feeling a certain way for a certain amount of time, she will often tell me like, I need to assess like why I need to sit down and figure it out, and which is basically code for like, take the kids and let me give myself some time, which is great. Like
Yeah.
I would rather know that and stuff like that, and I really admire. I think her time and she's done counseling and therapy and stuff like that before too, and I think her time in that is what gave her the skill set to recognize when things are a little bit off emotionally.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're just gonna have normal emotions, like I'm pissed off at the guy who cut me off, or I'm upset about this certain situation, or somebody said this and it hurt my feelings. But then there's that like next level of emotion that just kind of sit with you and like really start kind of impacting more of like your day and stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But that's where she's really good at assessing. that.
Yeah, it sounds like she's developed some great skills,
Yeah.
great self-awareness around that, and I've been on this journey too. I've got a long way to go, but I mean, it is in the point where you let something ruin your day, almost to a point where you're not functional,
Yeah.
to the point of like, or it really change your mood and the trajectory of where your mood is going, to a point where you can, for the old song, let it go.
Yeah.
But then within that, some things we shouldn't let go. I mean, if you're just like ignoring a problem, but there becomes a skill set with like, what is important for my own mental health, my own emotional well-being, and what steps do I need to take to get to that place?
Right.
So, the challenge you're feeling. And then the last one, I should have worked on how to word this, but, it's actually, I put, ask God's help to increase our capacity to experience ambiguity. I'm not sure that is stated as simply as I could, but the fact is that we need to be able to grow in an understanding there's nuances to life, that, life is complicated. And I've already said this, but, life is beautiful, but life is difficult.
Yeah.
The same person that's very insensitive to us can also still love us. They can do both of those things. They may be being insensitive about something and not showing as much empathy, but that doesn't mean that they still don't love us in some capacity.
Yeah.
But if we make it all or nothing, it's one or the other. So they show a little insensitivity. Oh, they don't love me.
Yeah.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a line in
Yeah.
in one of the songs in Hamilton, and the the George Washington character is talking to Alexander Hamilton, and he goes, "Dying is easy, young man. Living is harder."
Right.
You know what I mean? Because then it kind of talks about like, you know, there's a lot of beauty in what happens in life. Like he goes on to get married, have kids, and all lives this great life, but and gets to be well known for what he did. But you know, in this story, dying is the way out. He's quick and easy. You know what I mean? But for him to go on and live there is like it's kind of meeting those nuances and saying there's going to be hard times, but those hard times are often the learning and the pieces that we need to go through to get to where we need to go eventually.
Right. So yeah, where we can grow on our own self-assurance, so that we can take the bad and learn from it. We can accept the mistakes that we make and realize that we're not dumb or stupid or whatever, but learn. Okay, well, how can I do this better next time? Rather than just get on these sort of emotional pendulum swings about stuff, so as long as you've done something good. And we've talked mostly about the negative part, or the part that leads to depression. There is the other side of that.
Yeah.
My experience, though, is those are short-lived.
Yeah.
If everything is great all the time, that's going to be something that's going to get knocked out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then you come tumbling down from that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I do want to add one thing is when you talk about feelings, I think sometimes because we can get so caught up in our own feelings, and it's sometimes hard for us to look outside of ourselves, is, we've recommended, if you need a counselor, go to a counselor, but I also make sure you've got good people around you that can that can also sense when things are off and go, "Hey, you doing okay?" Because sometimes it just takes that question. I know in myself, I like to kind of internalize maybe my emotions a little bit. Like I'll kind of take them all on and I might put on a brave face or a face in front of people that's like, you got it all together. But every now and then, like Rachel will ask me a question or somebody will ask me a question, and that's when like all that emotion just like bottles up a little bit, you know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, we're shaking it, and then the question's like the shaker a little bit. But those are times that I need to know myself. Like for instance, my, thank you for the prayers for my mom and all that stuff. But there were times before the surgery that I felt very emotional about because knowing what could happen, you know what I mean? But I didn't always let that show. And there'd be times when I'd start crying, and it was like, well, why am I what am I crying about? Like nothing's bad's happened yet. Maybe I'm sad that she even needs it or whatever, but it was just the idea of it. But Rachel was able to like sense that in me and be like, let's talk about this. Let's not let that just go.
Why is this so raw right here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so I think it's good to have good people in your world as well as, the other resources and stuff like that, but good people that will be able to call stuff out of you.
And you do have good people in your world. Your little circle of family and friends is good and supportive. When you said that, it made me think about something that we haven't gone into, and that is, I think part of the self-awareness is to be able to evaluate the environments that you find yourself in. And if you're around a lot of toxic people that are really kind of affecting you emotionally, and they may be your friends, but there's different ways of being friends. I can tell you, one area where I've grown in it is if I'm around a lot of people and there's a lot of toxic conversation going on, I will try to change the conversation, not to be like, Pollyanna, rose color, but like if it's really toxic going the wrong way, I will try to do some things. And if I can't, I just step out.
Yeah.
Because I just know myself too well that's not a good place for me to go. As intriguing as it might be, if it's gossip or if it's, sometimes it's good to just, and we all need places to vent too.
Sure.
That's why there's an art to this.
Yeah.
But where it's going way beyond venting and now it's just toxic and now it's not leading anywhere except to anxiety and depression.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really, a good point is, often our emotions are dictated by our surroundings and the people that we have in our world.
Yeah.
And that's something I tell the youth all the time, is be careful who your friends are because you will start to mimic. If you have somebody who's constantly in that like critical, bitter place, you're going to become more critical and bitter if you give them so much of your time. You know what I mean? And not to say not to be in relationship with those people, but understand you have lines and limits of how much you should take.
Well, and I think you can also use your influence if there's a good mutual friendship going on to be able to pull and steer that conversation back to a more positive place that will benefit everybody.
Yeah.
So I think this may be a good thing to end. And I love this part from Philippians. And one thing I should say also about Philippians, and I haven't mentioned this yet, didn't do it yesterday either. Paul wrote this letter in prison.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most positive, beautiful things that he wrote in all of his letters. And he's in prison.
Yep.
So you talk about somebody who is not all or nothing thinking. He is looking at the positive through that.
Yeah.
And so it's towards the end of the letter, actually. But he writes this, and I think maybe a good thing for us to kind of close on today. He says, "From now on, brothers and sisters, if anything is excellent, if anything is admirable, focus your thoughts on these things. All that is true, all that is holy, all that is just, all that is pure, all that is lovely, and all that is worthy of praise." I just love that, and I made the point yesterday, we need to change the way that we think about thinking.
Yeah.
We don't change our way of thinking. Things change by the way we are thinking about them.
Yeah.
And so, that when we are looking for those things in life, I think it can lead to a more emotionally stable and a much more beautiful place by focusing in that way.
Absolutely. And what a great place to close, because I have a feeling that this will be a topic that we kind of keep coming back to a little bit is how do we let our emotions not only work against us, but how can they work for us to empower good?
Right. Yeah. Don't hear me say like, not push those emotions down. We need to like experience our emotions.
Yep.
Because that's how we get in touch with life.
Yep.
That's what God gave them to, because they're so great when we have them.
That's how we can appreciate those nuances
life.
and
so but like just how we're able to process them in the right way. That's the whole point. I hope we're headed towards in this sermon series.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. So, real quick, we are kind of close to our wrapping up time that we normally try to hit. Do you have a quick kind of preview for next week?
I think we're going to have to go through anger next week.
Nice.
And then we'll get into kind of wrapping it up with some stuff about gratitude and that sort of thing the third week.
Okay.
But yeah, and I said yesterday, there's some emotions that I like to run away from, and if I see an angry person, that's not one of them. I like talk about being angry.
Yeah.
But it's something we have to talk about because I know it's a struggle with a lot of people. So
Absolutely.
we'll be talking about that.
All right. Sounds good. Well, guys, as always, thank you for checking in, watching us. We appreciate you constantly, weekly. We sit right around the same number of views weekly, and that means that you guys are taking it in all the time. And we're just so grateful that you're on this journey with us. And as you're thinking through maybe your emotions and your processes and stuff like that, if you have any comments or questions, hit us up. You can hit us up at deepdive@hickoryflat.org. .com.
Well, you can
blanked.
You can do hickoryflat.church.
That's true.
Or just do .church. I think it's .org. I don't know. It's not .com. Hickoryflat.church will definitely get there.
Org. I'm pretty sure it's org.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's been a while. But anyway, as you get to the comment sections, you can put your stuff in there as well. We do like to be in community with you. So is there anything else you want to add, Dave?
No, just have a great week. It looks like we're going to have a beautiful week. Go Braves, go Dogs.
That's right.
Go whatever your college team is.
Unless you're a Florida fan.
Yeah, it's Bob Cox,
Sorry,
man. Bob Cox, man. You got to give him some love.
I love Bob,
Okay.
not his football team choice.
Okay.
Anyway, you guys take care, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, bye-bye.